There we go. All right. Well, Joyce and Cindy, thank you, and happy Friday, everybody. I understand it's a very happy Friday for you folks, and for me, for the most part, too, considering what potentially could have gone on in D.C. and what transpired thus far. We're not done yet, but to very quickly go through what everybody knows, we have a new speaker, Paul Ryan of Wisconsin. We have a new chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Kevin Brady of Texas. We're happy that we once again have a speaker following Speaker Boehner that appreciates and supports the credit. Chairman Ryan, we flipped him a while ago. I don't mean that in a negative way, but in a positive way in regards to educating him about the credit. And in the last 2 or 3 years, he has come out positively and has voiced public support for the tax credit. So it's nice to once again have a Republican Speaker of the House who appreciates affordable housing and the low-income housing tax credit specifically. The new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee we feel relatively comfortable about, in Kevin Brady. He has not come out publicly for the credit, nor has he co-sponsored the legislation, but he understands it very well. Our Texas delegation of developers and the folks at TAP down in Texas have done a good job with Chairman Ryan. But more importantly, from my perspective, because for me, staff is always the bellwether in regards to a member. His staff very much, and Lori specifically, his chief of staff, who was formerly his tax counsel, very much appreciates and supports the tax credit. So we feel like, once again, we're in a good position, although maybe not as strong as we were with Dave Camp and then Paul Ryan in regards to the chairman's position on the credit. What we specifically do not know is what his thinking is looking at tax reform. Folks may support the credit, but in regards to their larger goal, which is obviously every member of Congress's in history's goal of doing comprehensive tax reform, we're not sure where we fall in regards to Kevin Brady's vision for that. So we are continuing, as always, to strongly pursue the chairman, educate the chairman, as well as the other members. Folks were disappointed when Pat Tiberi did not get the chairmanship. I kind of go both ways on that. I like the fact that we still have an active champion who is a member of the Ways and Means Committee. When you're chairman, you cannot as vocally support specific programs. So there is a silver lining in the fact that Pat Tiberi did not get the chairmanship of the committee. He is still there fighting for us. And from everything we understand, the relationship with he and Kevin Brady is as strong as it was before. There was no animus involved in this election. And the fact that in the context of the election, the speaker made it clear who he wanted in the steering committee, and much of the steering committee went his way, it did kind of pave the way for Kevin Brady to get it without much turmoil. So we think we're in a very strong position with both the chairman and with our champion within the Ways and Means Committee. So then let's move on to extenders specifically, and then we can move into the budget, my little piece of it, which will be very brief. We still don't know what the roadmap is for extenders. The House did pass the Highway Transportation Bill. They now need to go to conference with the Senate to come up with the Highway Bill, which was a good sign that they were able to get that done as well. There is a very slight possibility that they could tack on the extenders to the Highway Bill, but it is very doubtful at the same time. The money and paying for it is an issue. They are largely paying for the Highway Bill. They have not paid for the tax extenders in the past. And so to tack on what potentially could be another $85 billion unpaid for onto a highway bill which is largely paid for would be a large piece of would be a distraction, especially since they have kept the conservative wing of the House Republican Conference in check in getting the highway bill done. They mostly voted along to go along with that. So we're not counting on the tax extenders being included in the highway transportation bill. There is a shot that they could attach the tax extenders onto the budget, which they have to come up with a budget by December 11th. That's when the current continuing resolution runs out. And there is a possibility they could do the budget and the tax extenders at the same time. So we're working on that possibility as well. Our largest concern with the extenders is the length of the package. There has been talk as of late And I know that when we've given the briefing in the past, whether it's me or somebody else, we've always talked in the context of a 2-year extenders package, which would cover FY 2015 and 16, so this year and next year's allocation. As was the case last year, all the readings we would get from members on both sides of the hill, no matter what party, was that the extenders package would be a 2-year package. And as we reported in the past, the Finance Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, before the August recess, did pass an extenders package, which was a 2-year package. Once again, that is up in the air, largely because of cost and somewhat because of politics. The one thing we will point out, which is still working in our favor in getting a 2-year package, is that no one believes, and members have vocally said that they do not want to come back during a presidential election cycle or in a lame duck just after a new Congress and a president-elect has been elected and do a tax bill. And that is what we're banking on right now, but we are still letting folks know that there is the possibility in negotiations and discussions between the House and the Senate and within the conference, specifically on the House side, that they may again come out with a 1-year extenders package, which of course would do us very little good at all with the 9% fix, especially if they do what they did last year and pass it sometime in mid or late December. You get that carton of eggs tax bill again, and it doesn't help us much at all. So we are still very much advocating for a long-term package, at least 15 and 16, that would include the 9% fix, and potentially, if we can include it in there, the language in the Senate side that included the 4% credit for acquisitions. So that's the tax update. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the tax side before I move over to my brief little portion on the budget.
I guess the one thing, this is Joyce from the Housing Alliance. David, can you give us any intel on people in Pennsylvania, legislators that might be important that we can reach out to? I heard you mention it might be part of the budget deal. Do you think that is going to happen, and is there something we should do in Pennsylvania?
It's tough. It's really tough, Joyce, because there's nothing to say that they can't do whatever they want. It's all a negotiation within and amongst the conferences in the Congress. If they wanted to clean the slate, get everything done, get the budget done in early December so that all the members could go home, and they've basically done what Speaker Boehner said and cleaned out the barn, but that would include now the highway bill, the budget, and tax extenders, they could do it if they wanted to. It's all going to come down to how long Speaker Ryan's honeymoon lasts, and he can get things through the House in a relatively calm and productive way, and keeping the Freedom Caucus at bay, and just say, guys, let's just get this stuff done. Everybody knows we have to do it. This is a vehicle to get it done. We'll try to pay for some of it. We can't pay for the tax extenders, but the budget will get done, and so on and so forth. And let's just come back January anew and start addressing issues then that we have to do in 2016. Or if folks decide to hold things up because they say we've given enough, we're tired of this, we're not going to spend $85 billion or whatever on a 2-year extenders package. It's too much money. Let's do what we have to get done now to cover this year. So in answer to your question, Joyce, without sucking up any more oxygen, no one knows.
Okay.
No one knows what they're going to be able to get accomplished. It's an ongoing negotiation. I think the president would like to get as much off the table as possible. The one thing that could blow the whole thing up is if the House, and especially the Tax Writing Committee, Ways and Means, insists on including some of these permanent extenders. And if you recall, that's what blew it up last time. You know, they have permanently passed Section 179 expensing. They have permanently passed the R&D tax credit. They have permanently passed some of these other extenders in the Ways and Means Committee, but they have not done the child tax credit. They have not done the earned income tax credit. Those are the things that the Democrats and the president are insisting upon it, that if you're going to do permanent extenders, you have to cover a broader base of permanent extenders. If the House holds firm to the permanent extenders, that could blow up the whole thing. If they say no, you know, we're willing to take the Senate package, which already passed the Finance Committee, although it hasn't passed the Senate, but it would, and go along with that and look at permanent extenders in the context of tax reform next year, but then moving into 2017, yes, they could get it done. They could do it part of the budget, or they could do it as a standalone as soon as they get done with the budget. So it's a negotiation and it's ongoing. No one knows what's going to happen yet, so we're still hopeful, and we are lobbying the folks. And again, what I would ask you guys to do, Mike Kelly's there. He's on board. He supports the program, and folks have talked to him, continue to talk to him. But Pat Toomey has not given anybody a signal either way, and he's critical. So as much as you guys, and I know you have, but as much as you can still continue to hammer away at Senator Toomey, that would be great, and show him the significance and the importance of it in the context of continuing in the long term to build affordable housing throughout the state. So Toomey should absolutely remain a target for you guys.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions on tax stuff? Great. Okay, so my piece of the budget really quickly. As everybody now should know, they did pass the budget. So they did it, and they busted the spending caps, which is what everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody except maybe 50 or 60 Republicans in the House. So Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the House, and then Democrats obviously busted the spending caps. They were happy with it. That's what they wanted to do, because as both Hal Rogers, Republican chairman of the of the Appropriations Committee in the House, as well as Tom Price, chairman of the Budget Committee in the House, have said the spending levels under the caps are unrealistic. I mean, we can only cut so far. So it was a good thing when they agreed, and they did pass with the $80 billion above the spending caps. $50 billion to be allocated FY 2016, $30 billion to be allocated in FY 2017, evenly distributed between defense and non-defense discretionary. At this point, we have no idea where that money is going to go. So as Joyce and I were discussing earlier this week, to say what that means for the line items in the HUD budget, we don't know yet. I am confident that the home number is going to be the number closer to what we wanted and not what the Senate number was at $66 million. I'm confident that the other programs will get what they need, if not maybe a little bit more than they need on that side. But that's what the appropriation subcommittees are working on now, and that includes the housing subcommittee under Labor HHS in regards to RD and rental assistance, which is a whole other issue that if someone wants to discuss, we can. But that's another thing which we continue to fight to this day with what the hell is going on over at RD, which is a nightmare. But the budget was a good thing, and now we're waiting to see what the subcommittees come up with in regards to specific line items for the budget on home, and I know you're going to discuss that further when I am done. The other thing that it did is it did extend the debt ceiling through March of 2017, so that's off the table. So they really did an amazing job, and credit to Speaker Boehner for getting this done, of clearing all of this up and getting it past the presidential election and getting into which will then be FY 2018 when they have to address these things next. So we're kind of in a good spot. Now we just have to wait and see what the subcommittees come up with. And that's what I'll say about the budget. I know you're going to go into more detail on it.
Right. Thank you very much. Let me see. Any more questions for Dave? You gave us a lot of good information. Appreciate that, and we will continue this budget conversation. Any questions? Okay. Then we have Joe Lindstrom from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition to talk about more of the HUD programs and housing programs in the federal budget. Joe?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me on the call, and congratulations, Pennsylvania Advocates, on the big win regarding the State Housing Trust Fund. I think that's really exciting for all of you. I think Dave gave us a really good overview of what's going on with the budget process, and I'll break down some of the individual HUD programs that we've been working on. As Dave mentioned, the real issue right now is trying to figure out which of the appropriations subcommittees will get what dollar amounts to spend. Our expectation, because this is $25 million for non-defense discretionary, $33 million when a portion, or excuse me, I said billion, when we include the overseas contingency operations account, that will make a shift. So it's a total of $33 billion for non-defense discretionary. So we expect that HUD programs will do better, but we don't think it'll likely be as good as what was in the President's budget request. So for the asks that we're making in the current round of advocacy, we've come up with numbers
Joe?
that are... Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if people want to mute themselves, they should do *6. We just had a little background music there.
Yeah,
Again, if you're not speaking, hit *6.
And please don't put us on hold. Thank you.
Thank you. Though I frankly just assumed the music was a soundtrack to my oration. So yeah, by all means, feel free to mute yourselves. So as I was saying, our budget asks right now find themselves, in many cases, somewhere between what the President's budget request was or what the FY15 budget levels were, sort of depending on the program. And to get into sort of specifically what some of those asks are, I can tell you for housing choice vouchers, our ask at this moment is to fully fund the renewal of all vouchers at $18.05 billion and provide $470 million for new vouchers for targeted populations. For those of you who are scrambling to write down notes of these numbers, please know that this is in our action alert we sent out yesterday, and you can also find it on our website at nlihc.org in the Take Action section. So that's housing choice vouchers. We are asking for $2.48 billion for McKinney-Vento homeless assistance grants. And we are asking for a fully funded 12-month project-based rental assistance renewals at $10.826 billion. For public housing, we are seeking $4.8 billion for the operating fund and $2.5 billion for the capital fund. And of course, many of you have been very, very aware of what's been going on with home and the way it was eviscerated in the original Senate appropriations bill. Our ask on home right now is $1.016 billion, which is slightly lower than what the President's budget request was, but about $101 million more than FY15 funding was. We are proposing $335 million with an M for the HOPWA program, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. And David mentioned that there's a lot of there is a lot of confusion going on with some of the USDA programs, rural development, rural housing. So our asks right now for that are to support rural housing, but because USDA isn't being clear about what their numbers are, it's a little bit difficult for us to give specific numbers. So I can tell you what was in our ask as recently as September, but because there's a lot of confusion at USDA, it's a little bit tough to say specifically what we're seeking. But for the most important program, Section 521 rental assistance, the ask is $1.177 billion. Other than that, there's, I guess, just a couple other programs, and then I'll talk about a couple of policy riders. The other two programs that we're looking at, let's see here.
Joe, I didn't hear CDBG. Did you mention that?
Say that again?
CDBG, I didn't hear. What is your number for CDBG?
CDBG is, excuse me.
$3 billion.
Yeah, it'll be $3 billion. The President's budget request was $2.88 billion. Our request is $3 billion.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And the final ones I want to mention are just Section 811, Housing for Persons with Disabilities, at $177 million. Section 202, Housing for the Elderly, at $455 million. And then the Native American Housing Block Grants at $660 million. So that's sort of a review of where our asks are. And frankly, if you want to pick any group of these programs that are particularly important to your work, or if you want to say to your members of Congress, please make sure as much of this new, sort of newly found spending flexibility goes to housing programs, that's a valuable message as well. But I do want to emphasize two policy points that we've been working on very hard.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Oh, of course.
I'm sorry. It's Joyce from the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania. Yesterday, we put out a call to action to our members and in Pennsylvania, a letter, an action alert that went to both senators and the U.S. representatives, and it outlined, I think, 9 areas, which I think we work with you on what we wanted to ask or advocate for. So that went out yesterday, and I just wanted to report that there were about 188 people responded to that. For folks on the call, you can give us a call if you have questions. If you want to call your local representative or senator with those line items, we'll have the 8 or the 9 items listed on our website, so you can pull those off and advocate for one line or all 9 lines. But it seems like now is the time to make those calls and emails to your rep and your U.S. representative and senators. So I'll let you go on to policy. I didn't want to go by without letting people know that should be in their inboxes from the Housing Alliance.
No, thank you, and frankly, thank you for giving me that information. I'll say that 188 congressional contacts is really, really outstanding, though that shouldn't make anyone who hasn't contacted their members of Congress feel like they don't have to. Every contact is extremely valuable. The 2 policy points I want to emphasize are things that you may have heard us bring up through some of our communications. The first is about the National Housing Trust Fund. Many of you are aware that the House Appropriations Bill that was passed earlier this year redirected all National Housing Trust Fund monies to offset a cut to the home program. This is something that we were very concerned about, especially because the National Housing Trust Fund is set to have a dedicated source of revenue outside the appropriations process. And the very philosophy of the Housing Trust Fund campaign was to avoid that very trade-off scenario. So we're very eager to have advocates make sure that they communicate to their members of Congress, especially senators, that the National Housing Trust Fund needs to be left alone in the spending bill and in the appropriations bill. And we think that's a really important message. For those of you who are not as familiar with the NHTF, it's distinct from the home program because of its emphasis on rental housing, and it's distinct from the low-income housing tax credit because the NHTF is deeply targeted, whereby 75% of all the money needs to benefit extremely low-income households living at 30% of area median income and below. So it's deeply targeted, and there is an emphasis on rental. That can be part of your message if members of Congress are asking, how is this program different from home? Why do we need this too? So we're really eager to make sure the National Housing Trust Fund is protected throughout this process. The other point of policy, NLIHC feels very strongly that the Moving to Work demonstration program should not be expanded until there are some reforms. And there was a very strong push to expand MTW within the original appropriations bills. Our hope is that the conference bills that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks do not expand MTW. Certainly within the world of advocates, there's a whole range of opinions and perspectives on MTW, and if any of you would like more information, I'd encourage you to get in touch with me or to take a look at our website. But we do feel strongly that before it's expanded, there needs to be some reform in how it's being administered. At this point, those are the key line items I wanted to go over. I can talk a little bit about the timeline that we're expecting on the budget, but I think right now I'd just like to open it up for questions.
Remember to star 7 to unmute yourself if you use star 6 to mute. Questions for Joe? I know it seems like we're always talking about the budgets that aren't getting done, but there is progress in Washington, and that's exciting. And now is the time to weigh in, make sure we have the message straight. Joe, you want to go on and talk about the timing?
Yeah, sure. For those of you who aren't sure exactly when this process will end, you're not alone. Everybody's a little confused, but I can give you some general the general guidelines that people are thinking of right now. The appropriations committees are expected to work up until the Thanksgiving holiday. And right now, our general expectation is that the bills will be on the president's desk the first week of December, which should allow for the president to sign them before the December 11th end of the current continuing resolution. So I think you should expect to see more calls to action between now and the first week of December from us and other groups, because there will still be a lot of sort of tug of war that will be going on with the new spending flexibility. So please be prepared for that. But I think by December 11th, we should be done with all of this.
Joe, you said that, this is Cindy, you said the appropriations committees would be working up until Thanksgiving. I'm assuming, you mean that they'll have a finished product by Thanksgiving to report out of committee, right? And
right.
That's really where the discussion of line items happens. Is that correct?
Yes, that will be happening over the next couple of weeks. And right now, what we're expecting in the next couple of days is the allocations for each subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, what many of you might know as the 302B appropriation amounts. So there's pre-conferencing going on between Senate and House appropriators, whereby they are going to decide on 302B numbers that are the same for both houses of Congress, for the Senate and the House, so that they don't have to reconcile widely different distributions. So the Transportation, HUD, and related agencies, subcommittees of both appropriations committees should be working with the same number. The work that they do once they get that number will be deciding which of their various programs that money is going to go to. So there might be, moving forward, a little bit of tension between transportation advocates and housing advocates. I think for the most part, transportation advocates and housing advocates work well together in the sort of the broader sense of community development, but we'll see sort of how tight these numbers are. And I think we'll have a sense of that in the next couple of days.
My understanding, Joe, was that we needed to really move and act and get people scheduled and emailing, calling, and meeting before November 20th. Is that accurate still?
Yeah, that's accurate still, and frankly, I would say, right now really, really is a good time. And the reason you heard November 20th is that's when Congress goes on recess. So they'll be gone the entire week of Thanksgiving. Certainly that's the expectation right now. So prior to November 20th is really important. But I would also say right now, today, yesterday are really important, because those 302B numbers are expected to be decided. If they weren't decided yesterday, they're expected to be decided today and announced over the weekend or next Monday.
Questions for Joe? Star 7 to unmute.
I have a question. Sarah from Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition. We're having in Bristol, Lower Bucks County, there's going to be a hearing at our Bristol Township meeting on the recovery houses. There's at least 100 recovery houses in Bucks County at least, and 80 of them reside in Bristol, and that is for people with recovering from substance use disorders. And, of course, the neighborhood is always in the flux, depending on the management of each recovery house. Some are done very well and some not so. Anyway, they're calling for the senators and the congressmen to be present at this community meeting. And to me, it just immediately speaks to the lack of affordable housing. That it's just a focus from, those bad people to, the infrastructure issues that we have for affordable housing for people who want to turn their lives around. That would be a really good point. Would you agree that this is a place to bring up some of these issues? The hearing will be the 26th of November, I believe.
So I'll agree that absolutely that's a good forum to bring up those issues, though I think you'd find me agreeing to that generally in many forums. I think housing relates to a lot of what neighborhoods and communities are seeing, and so I think it's very, very appropriate to bring up that issue. I think November 25th might be, as we sort of just discussed in terms of timeline, a little bit later in terms of decision-making on this particular budget. That doesn't mean housing isn't still important to bring up, but it also might suggest that for the elected officials and their staff who will be attending that event, it might make sense to get in touch with them ahead of time and communicate and say, you'll be at this event, you'll be learning about this issue. Clearly, housing is related to what's going on, and you have an opportunity to take action on that, and you have an opportunity to talk about how you took action on that when you show up on November 25th, right? So that can sort of work into your advocacy messaging, I think, really smoothly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else for Joe? Yeah. Go ahead. Someone else have a question? Joyce, do you want to say anything else about the advocacy that we are organizing on the federal budget?
I think I'm good.
Okay, so the action alert went out.
The action alert went out. We don't have any. If people want help, as many of you know, our conference is soon, and we've been moving along with the state trust fund work over the last couple of weeks. But we are open to helping folks schedule meetings. We're in the process of trying to get one scheduled for next week with Congressman Boyle. And there's a couple of other things in the mix. But if anyone on this call wants to go to a meeting, we can help facilitate that. Just give us a call at the Jenkintown office, or email me at joyce@housingalliancepa.org. Or if you want to just pick up the phone and call your local office and let them know these programs and these line items are important and valuable. And, back to our mantra, the solutions are working, but we need government to be a part of be in the game. So I think that's all I have.
Thank you. All right. Well, then I think we will say thank you to Joe and Dave and move from Washington back to Harrisburg. I have on the agenda, let me pull up, under the State Housing Trust Fund. Will this be our final update? Yes. This is our final update. Because we are done, we are victorious. This is the work is yet to be done, but the bill is signed by the governor, Act 58 of 2015. And just to recap, it means that when in a year or two, not this year, but in a year or two, revenue from realty transfer tax exceeds the figure that was in the bill as the baseline, in the law as the baseline, then some of that will be directed to the Housing Trust Fund, to FAIR. It'll be capped at $25 million, which we expect to hit that cap based on the Independent Fiscal Office projection around 2019. So, we need to be patient a little bit longer. We need to be advocating for the National Housing Trust Fund, which will also run through FAIR at Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. And that money, of course, will be statewide, be targeted to primarily extremely low income. But as far as the State Housing Trust Fund, amazing work from all of you, from folks across the state. It was truly a team effort and a huge team, and it was wonderful and a very exciting campaign. And we hope you will join us at the conference, at least for the celebration Wednesday morning and with the 18th, November 18th. But hopefully many of you will be at the conference, the 16th to the 18th coming up. So a little plug for that. Any questions on the trust fund at this point? Okay, before we move into these other few things, I just wanted to update you in. I'm going to insert, Tori, are you on the line? Yes. Okay, come closer to the phone, Tori. Now that we have lots of free time on our hands, she says, whatever. We've decided it's time to turn our attention to the state budget, and Tori is spearheading that. What would you like to tell us, Tori? Are you muted? Tori? Okay. Let's get Tori on. We're not hearing you if you're talking.
Sorry, Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think there was something going on with my headset. So we have been hearing from a lot of our partners that they've been affected pretty direly by the budget impasse right now, and they have a less of a capacity to serve their clients and the people who come to them, the most vulnerable people who have a lot of needs. So we really want to get on board with trying to advocate for resolving the state budget impasse. And we really want to focus on addressing basic human needs, focusing on essential services, and doing this with revenue. Because we really need to support access to opportunity. The most vulnerable populations really need access to opportunity. And we want to do this really the way that we have been successful in the past, by really focusing on solutions, focusing on the facts, saying that these organizations are really producing results. They're effective. They do a lot of great work, and they need to continue to be funded so that the most vulnerable people can benefit and still be helped and supported. So, again, we're just looking for people to help out. If they're interested in this, you can reach out to me here at the Housing Alliance and ask for more information.
Thanks, Tori. And a lot of thought that I know Tori mentioned the impact on organizations, and we've been talking internally about how sometimes an organization is in a difficult spot in terms of what they feel they can say to a legislator or to the governor, that it's sometimes difficult to do advocacy, especially if you're dependent on the state for your funding. And that's the value of working in a coalition, that you can contribute some energy and certainly your thoughts and experience, and the messaging will come from the larger group. So give that some thought. And Tori, did you have any particular events or actions in mind that you wanted to go over, or not yet?
Not yet. I think we're still fleshing out strategies and actions for moving forward. But we do have a call on Tuesday, so if anybody's interested in getting on that, again, just feel free. You can send me an email at victoria@housingalliancepa.org, or give me a call at 215-576-7044.
Thanks, Tori. Questions for Tori, or comments about the state budget at this point, or things that you're experiencing, your organizations are experiencing? *7 to unmute. Okay. Let me run through a few other things that are happening at the state level then. There was, last week, I think, I've really lost track of time. It was October 27th. There was a hearing held jointly by the Senate Urban Affairs and Housing and the House Urban Affairs Committee on fast-track foreclosure for vacant and abandoned properties. There is no bill yet. There is sort of a draft floating around that the Pennsylvania Bankers Association has come up with. But prior even to talking about a draft or a bill, this concept is something that a number of other states have acted on. The idea that when you have a property that is vacant and the property owner has moved away, that you want to get it through the system as quickly as possible so that a new owner can start, can be doing something with the property. Maybe it's in move-in condition and you want to keep it that way. Maybe it's deteriorating and you want to get somebody in there to fix it up. So conceptually, it's a win-win for both the lenders and the communities. As always, the devil is in the detail. And so our interest, the Housing Alliance interest, is in seeing vacant properties move into responsible hands quickly, but ensuring that the homeowner who's in foreclosure, that their due process rights are protected, that the property is actually vacant and abandoned, and making sure that the language works that way. It's a little bit tricky in Pennsylvania because these other states that have acted on the concept, by and large, have foreclosure statutes that they were able to amend. In Pennsylvania, the process of foreclosure, once you get past the notice provisions and get into court, that's all governed by court rules. And our state constitution specifies that the operations of the court is the purview of the Supreme Court and not the legislature. So there's a limit to what the legislature can do, and people are trying to figure out where that limit is. But that is something that is ongoing, and if anybody's interested in the issue, please let me know, and we can get you into the conversation. Does anybody have questions on that or comments? *7. Okay. There is an upcoming hearing on the 10th in Philadelphia. The Senate Urban Affairs and Housing Committee and the Senate Veterans, I don't know the full name of that committee, will be holding on housing assistance for veterans and a couple of bills that are before the committee right now. I have to be honest and say I was otherwise occupied the last couple of days and don't have a lot of details on that, but it is an issue that the Senate is interested in, and the Housing Alliance actually will be testifying. We do know that because of the good work that's happened at the federal level, homelessness among veterans has been greatly reduced, in some counties eliminated, not to say that no veteran will ever become homeless again, but there are systems in place. But I think that these bills envision other sorts of housing assistance, also not just homelessness. And clearly, it's an issue that I think we all support. The idea that veterans should not be wanting for a place to live. So that's something to keep an eye on. It will tell you that actually two bills, but the same content, House and Senate bills, moving to amend a law that's actually been on the books for 15 years now. It's called the Municipal Code and Ordinance Compliance Act. And at the time that it was passed back in 2000, the thinking was that if somebody buys a house that has known code violations, there needs to be a limit in the length of time that they have to fix it up. We need to have some enforcement. And what the law says is that if a building that has code violations, the new owner has 18 months to fix it up, a vacant lot, 12 months to deal with the issues. Over time, over the last decade, as more and more communities have begun looking at code enforcement and what they could do about blight, and actually enforcing their own codes, which have shorter time periods, it came to the attention of lawmakers that this law, the Code and Ordinance Compliance Act, is actually lays out too long a period of time. And the suggestion was to shorten the 18 months to 12 months so that people had to get those properties fixed up more quickly. We actually suggested an amendment to the bills that says, or a shorter time if the municipality is enforcing its own property maintenance code, because oftentimes, depending on the seriousness of the violation or how easy it is to fix, the owner may get 60, 90, 120 days to fix it up rather than waiting 12 months. So those bills are pending. The Senate bill passed the Senate and is in the House. The House bill just came out of the House Urban Affairs Committee, but as I said, they are identical. And so we do hope to see those bills move. That's our agenda. We'll open it up again for questions first on what we've talked about, and if there are no questions on that, then other comments. But any questions about anything that we've talked about so far today? Unmute with a *7. Or mute with a *6 if you have background noise there. Any comments about what's going on around the state, what you're dealing with? Again, if you want to, impact of the budget impasse, other issues that you're dealing with. All right, then we will conclude with an invitation to come celebrate with us on the passage of the Housing Trust Fund at the annual Homes Within Reach conference. Again, the celebration is Wednesday morning, November 18th, but the whole conference is 16th to the 18th, so please check it out on our website. And again, it's going to be, I think, a really terrific collection of workshops dealing with homelessness, dealing with housing development, dealing with blight, justice involved, mental health, a whole array of things. We do have continuing legal ed credits. I saw we were applying for social work credits. I'm not sure where that stands. And, it's generally just a pretty fun event. So hope to see you there. And thank you all for getting on the call.
Thank you.
Thank you.